halacha. Could be at the end, if we have another minute or two, we'll share maybe another short vart, lekavod Chanukah. But for now, we're going to go into the halachos. I had a problem, which I shared with some of the people in this room, that just to say over, the basics, I think most people know, and it could get very boring. To not say over the basics, then you run the risk that there's always something someone doesn't know, and you thought it was obvious, and they thought it wasn't, and you run into issues. So what I'm going to try to do is I use this fabulous sefer. This is Rav Shmuel Felder from Lakewood, one of the Rosh Yeshivas in Lakewood. It's called Shir Halacha. I'm not getting a commission. I'm just telling you that I love the sefer, and almost everything I'm going to say comes from here. And he brings down within the halachos, and a lot of things which I personally found to be things that we do not know. I'll say a lot of them I did not know. A lot of them I asked around other people do not know. So hopefully within saying over the halachos, we'll incorporate some tidbits, some little diamonds, some little jewels that we didn't know, which I think it ultimately will elevate our entire yontif. So let's begin. And we're going to focus primarily, we're going to focus on the menorah. Why are we going to focus on the menorah? Well, because that's what Chanukah is. That's like saying on Pesach, I'm going to focus on the matzah or the daled kaisis. Why? Why don't you focus on, everything's important. There's many aspects, of course. There's the Hallel that we say Hallel Shalem. There's the Mishnah Berurah that screams, don't miss a word of Hallel, says the Mishnah Berurah. You miss one word, you're not Yotzei. He says Mishnah Berurah might be a bracha levatala. Very important whenever you say Hallel Shalem to make sure you say every word. Critically important. There's of course the inyan of eating milchiks, which we spoke about yesterday, which comes from the miracle was done through Chalavi. There's of course the inyan of eating donuts, which comes from where? So everyone says it comes from fried items. No one in the world ever fried their donuts in olive oil, nor do I suggest someone try, because that probably will be quite disgusting. So it comes, famously, we all know, it comes from Shlomo Zalman. Shlomo Zalman says, why donuts? It's not really a din in donuts, it's a din in mezainis. Why mezainis? Because what do we say in Al Michya that we don't say in other of our bracha achroinas? Va'al mizbechecha. We mentioned the mizbeach. Who cares? Shkayach mentioned the mizbeach. Says Shlomo Zalman, a fascinating vart. When they were mitayer the Beis HaMikdash, they were mitayer everything. There's one thing they couldn't be mitayer. The mizbeach was made out of vanim, of stones. The stones cannot be mitayer. They had to be goynes. They had to hide the stones and rebuild the mizbeach. So they didn't have the mizbeach. And Shlomo Zalman says, so the Yevanim themselves, no, not the Yevanim, the Chashmonayim, not Achshmonayim. The Chashmonayim themselves decided to eat mizainis. So they could have a memory. They're sitting in the Beis HaMikdash, they're doing the Avodah. Imagine, they have the whole Neis Chanukah, but there's no mizbeach. They want to mention the mizbeach. So that's when we eat donuts. So why is that important to mention? Because I think we eat a lot of donuts. I also think that bracha achrayna is a shtickle bit of a lost art in 2024. We're not there yet. We're almost there. But in 2023, it certainly was a lost art. And I don't, chas v'shalom to be Moitzi Laz in Klal Yisrael. We'll just talk personally for a moment. Alamich is hard. And it's not that we don't know the words. That's certainly a challenge. Certainly the challenge. It's just saying it. Why do I say it's not that we don't know the words? Because everyone at probably every moment they need to make Dal Micha has some way to have the words. Whether you have a phone that you can have the words on, whether there's a sitter nearby that you have the words on, whether there's a computer that you have the words on. Getting the text is not the problem. The problem is saying the text. So hopefully, I'm sure many donuts will be consumed. I would love to have a donut counter in Klal Yisrael. Can you imagine having that's like a counter to know how many donuts? I mean, Eretz Yisrael already started. Shleshim Yom Kodem Achag, they're makbid gomer. There has been more donuts consumed already than we're going to consume the whole Chanukah. But the focus on Al Mechia, because that's the whole purpose, says Shlomo Zalman. The father of the Rambam screams, Al Minhag Yisrael, Tayrehi, don't be Mavatal in one minhag, but let's get involved in the Menorah. Okay, here we go. Why do we light the Menorah? Because of the Neis Chanukah, right? Okay, Gavaldik. So let's go into any person's household. We're going to now zoom into Pliny Almighty Ruvain's household. We're that little bird on the wall, and we're watching Ruvain light his Menorah. So he set up the Menorah. Maybe we'll talk about the wicks oil in a moment. And he sits there, and maybe even puts on his hat and jacket. And he goes, and he takes the candle, and he makes the bracha, and he lights the candles, and he says, Anir Salalo. And we now have the ability to look into Ruvain's mind. We look into his brain, and we see what was Ruvain thinking when he was lighting the menorah. I am now lighting the menorah. That's all he's thinking, nothing more. Which usually, by most mitzvahs, that's perfect. That's the kavanah. Kasher tziva habayre. I'm doing the mitzvah. Why am I shaking the lulav? Because Hashem told me to shake the lulav. Why am I putting on tefillin? Because Hashem told me to put on tefillin. There's, of course, deeper levels of kavanah and everything. Tefillin is Yitzias Mitzrayim, v'chulu. Parenthetically, if you're ever not sure, I don't know if I've ever said this one to everyone, it's important. If you're ever not sure what the kavanah behind the mitzvah is, go for Yitzias Mitzrayim. You got Roiv Rubai, and usually there'll be some aspect of connection. Stop. That's just a personal feeling. But says Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, Nira lanias daiti, the hadlokas ner Chanukah, hi atzma hahoida ve'ahalel. The lighting of the menorah is the haidah, the thanks, and the halel to Hashem. What does that mean? Kolaymar. Through the lighting, we're putting in our hearts and our minds to thank Hashem for the nisim that Hashem did for us, that He saved us from the Milchama. Just like we say in Aneres Halalu Anam Alikin, Ala Teshua is Val Milchama is V'chulu, Te'elahaida is Ulahalel Shimcha Agadol Yisachvan V'sachva Shosecha. And therefore, says Rosh Hashanah Zalman Auerbach, if you light the candles, Bizmanoi, but you don't put any thought, ve'inoi noisin elibai, lahavin, to think, shahad lakahi, that why am I lighting the menorah? To give haidah and halal to Hashem, you're missing the whole thing. Chasar loy kol ikar. This is not some chassidish azach. This is Rosh Hashanah Zalman Auerbach. Lahalacha lemaisa. When you light the menorah, your mind is not just thinking, I'm lighting the menorah. Your mind is thinking, lahaydais hula'alel. And that's the ikar takana of the menorah. He says over here some nice vart on the bottom, but we're gonna continue. So number one is we light the menorah. And everyone has a menorah. We'll take a question in 1 second. And avada, you should get beautiful oil. And avada, you should have beautiful wicks. And it should lit for how long? A half hour mikra adin. If you're lighting early, you want a half hour after shkia. You want to be more lechatchila. You want an hour and a quarter after shkia. You want to maybe get the brisker of tichla regel min hashak, depending where you live. You have 2 hours, 2.5 hours. That's all beautiful. But if when you light it, your brain is off, or if when you light it, you're running around, or the house is in an uproar, which often it is, Baruch Hashem, and your mind is not there at all, you're missing the whole thing. Din number one. Yes, question. So it's very interesting. So is this a din in mitzvah tzrichas kavanah or not? So Baruch Hashem, we paskin that even if you don't have kavanah, we're yotzei. Deraisis, derabbanans, big shmuz. You have the chayadam, which is where we're about to go. It says the chayadam when you're wrapping your tefillin when your brain is off. If we were to stop and ask you, why are you putting straps on your arm? You say, oh, because I'm putting on tefillin. So even if you're not thinking about it, it's inherent. That's all true. Rosh Zalman is making a very important hadgash over here. And that's why he doesn't say you're not yotzei. You're talking about being yotzei the mitzvah, which you're right. You're yotzei. No one's going to say you're not yotzei, and no one's going to tell you to make a new bracha. But he's saying chaser like kol iker. You're missing the whole thing. And let's be honest, what is my Chanukah? The Tana Rabbanan, I know, to learn Torah. But my Chanukah, what do? We do the menorah. So Rosh Zalman is pointing out, you can have everything, but if your brain is off, you miss the whole thing. Number one, beautiful. Number two, Haneres Halalu. We just mentioned Haner, yeah?
So in other words, because we also say it's Parsumei Nisa.
Yes.
So without thinking, there's no...
So you bring up an interesting point, that maybe it's lacking in the pursuing nisa of it.
I don't know what I'm doing.
It could be. There is that is a separate ingredient in menorah, which we're going to get to in a moment, that pursuing nisa carries with it some fascinating items. But it's true. It could be that's part of it, that menorah is more than just the lighting. Very, very, very valid. Haneres halalu. So says the Mishnah Berurah, it's about machlokes hapaiskim, but lemaisa, there's one time everyone agrees you should not say haneres halalu, which is when? While you're lighting the first candle. Beautiful. What if you did? You did. Did you have to make a new bracha? Did you mess up? And he says over here, Gedalim. It's the gear for kids, he says. Thank you, I appreciate it. It's the gear for kids that, they talk in the middle and they ask about things. Okay, we're all Rav Shmuel Felder's kids. Yeah.
That would be different because remember that's a kid asking a question related to menorah is like
Machavin, beautiful. Says Shmuel Felder, 1 second. Regarding brachos, Simin Kuf Samach Zayin in Shulchan Aruch says, if you're mafsik me'inyin hadvarim shemavarchin alav, for example, Mamash, you just said, beautiful, you asked to pass the salt. It's not a hefsik. So he wants to say, yesh lad, and this is one side of the coin, that's not a hefsik. Why is it not a hefsik? It's not a hefsik because what are you saying, Haneres Halalu? You're talking about the hadlaka. That is what the Neres Halalu is. And therefore, he wants to say it's not a hefsik. He then brings a fascinating raya, which we don't really have time to deal with right now. He brings down a Hagoyis Maiminis that there's a nusach of the Haneres Halalu that they found in the Masechtas Seifrim, which says over there clearly that they said Haneres Halalu before they lit. It's clear in the nusach that Mavarchin lahalik umiyado Haneres Halalu, and afterwards, what? In between the brachas. They made the bracha, they said Haneres Halalu, then they said Shas Nisim, and then they lit. So he wants to bring a raya that the Haneres Halalu is potentially integral within the brachas. He says, yes, Rav Chaim Kanievsky the Shaila, Rav Chaim was making not to make a new bracha. Fascinating. Rosh Shmuel says make a new bracha? If he says make a new bracha? Make a new bracha. Give out. What? Yeah. Not before the first candle. I don't believe so. Really? Because connected to Mishnah Berurah? That sounds weird. Okay, it could be. I don't know. I'm not familiar with I'm not familiar with Menagim. But it's interesting because the Mishnah Berurah says it's actually a Shulchan Aruch. It's actually Shulchan Aruch. It's a Shulchan Aruch. I know, it sounds funny. We have to look into it. Shulchan Aruch is Achar Shehidlik on Haneres Halalu. What? I know, yeah. But it's a, okay. How can the Amina connect the Shulchan Aruch? Sounds funny. He goes on the whole thing. Sounds funny. Okay, weiter. Let's continue. Another important detail, which this actually is something that there's a lot of confusion about. So daddy, tata, abi lights menorah. Who does he light for? For sure his wife. Who else? Okay, depending on the children light menorah, the boys for sure, many of the girls light menorah also. Until what age is a shayla? We're not discussing that. It's grada. There's nothing really wrong with it. There are those I believe that the girls light menorah mamish until they get married. I think such a thing exists. And fine. But whoever is being yotzei with the father's lighting, when do they have to be there? When do they have to be there? Do they have to be there for the brachos? They have to be there for the halakha. When do they have to be there? So the halachic answer, me'ikar adin, they don't have to be there at all. They don't have to be there at all. Why not? Because we know the concept of a shliach. Shliach K'leifer, you don't have to be there. And this is important because there could be a time a teenage daughter could be out and she's not home. There could be a time that even the wife is not home. Okay, whether you should wait for her or not, that's a different discussion. But Lamaisa, if they're not there, it's okay. However, says Rosh Shmuel Felder, something very, very obvious when you learn through the Sugya. There's 3 brachas we make on night number 1. Get them in order, please. You make the bracha, and if you don't know the order, or you get confused like everyone else does, so let's not be Bali Gaiva, just open a siddur. Usually you have the brachas in front of you in 72 different cards, and yet your eyes are closed, and yet you forget the bracha, and you get all messed up. I understand, just look at the card. Listen, we all do the same thing, so we can laugh at ourselves together. So, but there's 2 other brachas. Have the bracha on the candles, shell, not shell, okay? There's the bracha of Sha'as Nisim, and the bracha of Shachiyanu. Okay, the bracha of Sha'as Nisim and Shachiyanu are fascinating brachas, because there's a whole sugya in halacha that you might make these brachas even when you don't light the menorah. By seeing the candles. Now in Gaza, fascinating psakim coming out. What exactly the soldiers are supposed to do? They don't have a house. Where do they light? Do they light on the base? Can they light on the base? Should someone light on their house? If they didn't light when they see a menorah, could they actually be Makayim this day and provide the first time? And who knows how long? The Birchas Haraya, fascinating. What do we see? We see that there's an ingredient in the mitzvah to be there to see the menorah with the bracha. So he says something very simple, very obvious, that it's certainly the Ma'il Lechatchila to be there by the brachas, be there by the halakha, and to hear the bracha of Shas Nisim and Shechianu, and to be Yotzei the mitzvah. Shechianu, there's that tzad that the Shechianu goes on the day it's well, we don't paskin that way, but Lamaisa there's that tzad, and therefore you should be there. Certainly the first night, certainly the right thing is to listen to the brachas that brings out what the Shechianu is. But now this is really where I found things go absolutely fascinating, is we get to shul. And I'll tell you what usually happens. The Rav, the Gabbai, goes over to Shmerel. Says, Shmerel, you want to light the menorah? Shmerel says, no. Shmerel, you want to light the menorah? I laid it home. Shmerel, the Rav said, you're allowed to make a bracha in shul and still make it a bracha at home. It's okay. I'll light it home. It's like one of those things, I don't know if anyone else has witnessed this, and people have this issue, like all of a sudden now we're all makbid on brachas. Now we're all makbid. I said this last night, I realized that many people have the same feeling as me. Now, Lamaisa, fine. So the Psak Halacha is regarding the first two brachas, Magdil Shechianu in a moment, you say it in shul, you say it at home, it's no problem. The question is, what about the Shechianu? What is Shechianu? So the Mishnah Brura says, we're very good. It's all going to come out right now. What's pshat, which is really why I'm talking about this, because I think many of us know this halacha, or will be told this halacha, and the Rav maybe will tell us, go light the menorah, and be like, I didn't light yet. I'll be like, it's okay, you can light it home with the bracha. You're like, okay, I listen to the Rav, and you go and you light, and then you wonder, like, what am I doing? I just lit up. So let's understand. It's exactly what we're going to do right now. Kiddush and shul is against a sugya, against a parsha. The answer is yes. Why, what, how, and when is, let's not get involved in that. Not completely at all. As you'll see in a moment, it's actually very, very connected. But let's understand it. It says in Mishabur Tafresh Ayin Aleph, Sivkatim Emhei, he brings a Mishari Tshuva. He brings a Shel's Tshuva Zera Emes, that he says, if you light the first night in shul and you made all the brachas, you do not make the Shechianu in your house, unless you're being Yotzei someone with your brachas. Which means, if someone has a wife and or children who are not lighting menorah, and you are lighting for them, then in shul you can make all three brachas, and at home you can make all three brachas. End of Mishnah Brura. Comes along a guy in Gadol Ramosha Feinstein, and he's very bothered. He says, I don't understand. So what does it come out from the Mishnah Brura? Let's say you don't have a wife and kid at homes. A bacher, which ironically is usually the one that they pin for the task. I don't know why, this is one of those things. It's like, you come of age, all of a sudden you get thrown to the front to make the brachas out loud. One of those tortures that we have in Klal Yisrael. Unclear why, and I see from everyone's faces that you've all witnessed the same torture. So, or experienced. Says Rameshus, what do we see from the Mishnah Brura? We see very simply that if you don't have a wife and kid at home, can you make the Shechianu again? No. Says Ramesha, 1 second. What about the bracha of Sha'asa Nisim? Why are you making that bracha again? He says, Halai, we find in the Gemara in Shabbos, to mevarich brachas ala nisim b'chol yom. Why? Misham denes b'chol yom. But you already made that bracha. So says Ramesha Feinstein, why are you making the bracha of Sha'asa Nisim a second time? He doesn't understand it. This is in Igros Moshe, Archaim Chelik Aleph Simin Kof Sadi. He doesn't understand it, and he says you shouldn't make the bracha of Sha'asa Nisim a second time. L'maisa, it's just incredible. Says there's some Zalman Arbach, you don't make a bracha of Sha'asa Nisim a second time. Can I get the Mishnah Brura? Says there's some Zalman, you don't make the bracha of Sha'asa Nisim a second time. Like Ramesh said, Sha'as Tshuva, Cyrus, but Tshuva says the same. Yes? Yeah?
What's the makar for the mitzvah?
Oh, we're getting there. We're getting mamish right there. I know we went backwards because it doesn't work, because the Mishnah Brura says something, everyone argues, and it goes like this. We're getting there right now. Comes along Ramosha, says Ramosha, it must be, why are we lighting in shul? This is where Ramosha brings it out from. Says Ramosha, you know why we're lighting in shul? Nothing to do with the chiyuv. It's a minhag. Ein ze ikar achiyuv ella minhaga. And therefore, says Ramosha, that's why you say Sha'asa Nisim in shul and you say Sha'asa Nisim at home. And therefore, says Ramosha, who adid Shechianu? You say Shechianu in shul, you say Shechianu at home. Lamalo, he says, Just like you can say Shas Nisim 2 times. Why? Because it's a minhag. And he asked about Kiddush Friday night. It's a very similar thing, that there's places with a minhag to make Kiddush Friday night, and that's the whole sugya over there, what's going on with Kiddush and Shul Friday night. It's a minhag. In Lamaisa, we have Mekayris that we make brachas on minhagim, which is always a big shayla. Why, how, what, where, and when. But that is what Hagayin HaGadol Ramosha Feinstein says. And he says, so you'll make the bracha twice. He argues on the Mishnah Berurah. He argues on the Mishnah Berurah. Lehalocha lamaisa. Now, lehalocha lamaisa, one could say, Ramosha says you can make a bracha. You make a bracha. Shmuel Felder says, Savik brachas, don't make a bracha again. Givaldik. I'll add, not arguing, just, it could be in certain scenarios, maybe we would let, maybe if there's someone who, wasn't so happy with lighting in the shul and he sort of got coerced into doing it and he feels bad and he really wants to make the brachas, maybe there's a makom. Ramosha says you make the brachas, there's always a makom to be seimich on Ramosha. That's the fascinating shachanu in shul versus the house. But now what if it's the other way around? What if you lit at home and then you light in shul? What's the din now? What's the din now? What does Adam say?
What do you do?
You lit at home. You didn't daven Meir beforehand. She's daven Meir beforehand. Machlekes, minhagim, blah, blah, blah. You didn't. Okay, Givaldi. Show up the shul. You say, light the menorah. You said, I lit already. Can you make the bracha? Says the Shari Tshuva. Make all 3 brachas, no problem. Make all 3 brachas. Which maybe is a raya Torah Moshe. Maybe shows that the whole adlaka is just a minhag of the shul. Because if not, what do you do making a shechiyanu? What do you do making shechiyanu? You already made a shechiyanu? But that is another incredible halacha. And he brings a gevaldik raya, the Chuvas and Haggis. Ramosha Sternbach brings a beautiful raya that we all know that this is true. If anyone has ever gotten an aliyah, you've utilized this halacha. Why have you utilized this halacha? He says because you said brachas hatayra. Why do you make another bracha al hatayra? You already said brachas hatayra. He says the reason is because one of the reasons are because maybe there are other people who didn't make the bracha yet. Maybe. And that's why the Ben Ish Chai and others want to say that the only time you'll remake the shechanu if maybe there's someone in shul who didn't light yet. But la halacha, you'll make all 3 brachas. Another incredible halacha. And from here we see, now let's just circle back around and not get lost in machlekes. If you light in shul, what's the halacha? You can light again at home. If you're being yoitis, now probably, and this I think everyone would agree to, if we have a choice to have a bacher light in shul, or have a choice to have a married person light in shul, it would seem, which is better, have the married guy light in shul. Because then he can make all 3 brachas in shul, and all 3 brachas at home, and not get involved in machlekes. And everyone's happy then, because at home you're being yoitz to the rest of your house. Whereas if not, you're getting involved in a big machlekes. Shlomo Zalman says not say Shas Nisim. Ramosha Feinstein says yes. Big machlekes. Mishnah Berurah says no shechiyanu. So therefore, l'chayra, that is the right thing to do. That's the first night. The other nights it's still machlekes with Rosh Shlomo Zalman. Now we come to lighting the menorah. And lighting the menorah is a time that we all show how little patience, unfortunately, we have for things that take more than a second. Why? Okay, the first night of Adar, we light it, and we hold the candle there, and it lights, beautiful. And the second night, maybe. By light number like 3 and 4, we all know we're doing touch and go. Two-hand touch. I touched it, Kav Sayin Zakikla, we all know all the Torah. Halakha is a mitzvah, right? Well, guess what? You have to do the halakha. You have to light the candle. If you just touch it and you move on, did he do the halakha? Absolutely not. So very important. The Bir halacha is a mayrich a length that he says you have to light roiv hapsila. Roiv hapsila. Now, what exactly this means is a whole shmooze. What is roiv hapsila? Well, what do you mean? Oh yeah. Oh, so they discuss what if there's a part of the wick that's not going to light. I just I don't know why you have like this 12-inch wick hanging out of your thing. You should have a little wick and then you light it. That's just my personal thing. But the Aruch HaShulchan comes along and he says something in which I think can moderate this whole parsha. Says Aruch HaShulchan, if you know that you have good wicks, this is his words. Tam acher, he says, im yodua. I think he says this. I don't know if it's his words. She'absilois shaloi toivos, v'loi yitkabu, and they're not going to go out. You've been using the same wicks for the last 10 years. They never capsized. You never had a problem. Still waiting to meet Sony Klai, so that doesn't change weights every single year and every single time. Okay, but I mean, I told you, I try to do the rolling guys. I'm trying to hold strong. Einoi tzarich lahalik roiv apsila, says the Aruch HaShulchan. Why? Because the whole reason to light roiv apsila is to ensure that what? That you lit the menorah. But says the Aruch HaShulchan, if you know it's lit, and what I see from here, and the Aruch Rabbeinu says the Stapler did the exact same. What you see from here is those who light candles, which hopefully is all of us, you do know there's a point that it's lit. There's a point that it's lit. Then there's a point that you could hold it there, and then it could be lit roiv. We see from the Stapler and the Aruch HaShulchan, that second level you don't need. Once it's lit, now that doesn't mean, and we have to be careful, because usually when you go this route, you end up doing the touch and go, and whoops, and you go back over there, and then you have a whole shayla that you had a hefsek, and you started singing near Salalu, and it's a mess, and that's what people do. And again, if we were a little bug in the eye watching it to different people's Klal Yisrael's houses, that's what we would find, unfortunately. But the other end of the coin, it says Aruch HaShulchan, if you know it's lit, that is enough as well. Now, this is the part that I find the most fascinating of everything we're going to say today. I always thought, and I'm going to be the first to admit, that if I were to ask the following question, is there a din to look at the neiros? So at this point, everyone responds, what do you mean? The shefa, the oiros, the bracha, all the Torahs about the neiros and the kedusha and the tahira, and it's all beautiful and we're not belittling that. But is there a din? Do you have to look at the neiros? So I always thought, and this was a classical trivia question when you learn Baba Kama, is where's the one place in Shulchan Aruch that discusses looking at the neiros? And everyone says, Hilchos Chanukah, obviously, go look in Hilchos Chanukah, and it says, Avad, you like to. You look in the Gantz Hilchos Chanukah, you don't see anything. You do see, as we mentioned earlier, if you don't light a menorah, we mentioned the soldiers in Gaza, if maybe they're not able to light, when you see a menorah, you make a bracha, correct. But nowhere does it say you have to look at your menorah. Where does it say it? In Hilchos Choshen Mishpat. Choshen Mishpat, by the case where the menorah is outside the Chanos, the end of Gemara and Baba Kama, we just had in Daf Yomi, I don't know, Chav something over there, beginning and ends. It says over there, the animal's walking by with the thing on his back, and it catches from the menorah. There in Choshen Mishpat says that the Bala Chanos has to be mistakel b'neirosav, to make sure it doesn't do damage. The only place in all of Shulchan Aruch talks about looking at your menorah. Beautiful. Comes like Moshe Feinstein. Oh, yeah. Very good. That's the whole point. Thank you. That's not we didn't look at the menorah. That has nothing to do with anything. That's Midin Hazik. That's like saying when your wife says, "Don't leave the candles lit in the house because we don't want to burn down the house." Correct. Don't burn down the house. Very important. And we'll get to, Rameir shared with me a beautiful tshuva from Rav Yitzchak Zilberstein that we'll get to in one moment. Says Rav Moshe Feinstein, Arachaim Chelik Esim in Min Gimel Ois Aleph at the end. He argues with everything I just said. Says Rav Moshe, you have a chiyuv to look at the neiros. He says, Ri'iyachas. For a moment. So you're all going to say, Shkayach, I lit the candles. Of course I looked at it. I'll show you a very practical. Someone have a practical nafkamina? Okay, good. No, another practical nafkamina. Thank you. That's a good one. Another one. No, come on, think. If you have a chiyuv to look at the candles, when do you have that chiyuv? What do you mean? When you light the candles, right? No, 1 second. Slow. When you light the menorah, what's the earliest time you light the menorah? Plaga mincha. Is it nachta plaga mincha? No. Comes along over here, and he says, Givaldik. He wants to say, I don't know who he quotes this from. Who does he quote this from? Could be it's Moshe himself, I don't know. Maybe it's Shmuel Felder, whoever it is. He says, Yeshli Zayir, Sheyiras Aneris Kam Balayla. If you light early, it's not the Zman of the Menorah. So you were yait, say 100%, you were yait to that halakha. But he wants to say that Ramosha says that you have a dai b'ri'ah achas, you have to look at the menorah. There's a mitzvah to look at the menorah. He brings rayos from everything we spoke about earlier, that he says Ramosha, if there's a mitzvah to make a bracha when you see it, certainly you have to listen to looking on menorah. So he wants to say, Imkein hamadlik miplaga mincha yeshli zayer sheyiras aniros gam balayla. Now, on Erev Shabbos, what do you mean? No, because it's not nacht. It's not the zman halakha. Because Ramosha, That's good for the Chiddush. That's the Chiddush. One second. That's the Chiddush. Let me explain. That's a good for the Chiddush. If the din of lighting a menorah, you're allowed to light from black. But now, it's not the Zman. As long as you put enough oil that it's going to stay lit. 1 second. We pass Kaf Sligs. I understand. 1 second. As long as you light and it's going to stay lit, you're yoytze your mitzvah halakha. But he wants to point out that Ramesha says there's another ingredient, which the Shartzian points out, you could be yoytze with someone else's menorah. Which is true. As long as you see a menorah at night, you're yoytze this chelik of the mitzvah. But he says you have to see the menorah, and I think it's gevaldik. Now, he says Erev Shabbos, he has a big clair. He says when you light menorah on Erev Shabbos, what's pshat? Is pshat that the zman for on the Eretz Yisrael, there's lots of Torah about this, is pshat, that's another case. He says in Erev Shabbos, is the zman of Nacht on Friday and Erev Shabbos? Meaning, of course, in Erev Shabbos you can't light at night, it's Shabbos. So does that mean that the zman was moved earlier? Nafkamina, do you have to see your menorah at night? Now, you might say this is ridiculous. Who doesn't see the menorah at night? I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true. I'll give you there could be a million cases. Yeah, you go to a Chanukah party, that's at a restaurant. Okay, the restaurant has menorah, I don't know, you sat in the back room. And then you came home and your menorah was out and you went to sleep. According to Ramesha Feinstein, you missed out a chelik of the mitzvah. That's what Ramesha writes in the Tshuva. That's what he wants right over here. Yizayer, to be careful to look at the menorah. And that is Givaldi. Good. Weiter. Yes. That's Kavsei Zakula. Yeah. Yeah. Erev Shabbos. So Erev Shabbos.
It's not a din Erev Shabbos. He's saying it's a din in the fact that you lie and make a bracha shows you the mitzvah of
I agree with what you're saying. He wants to say over here, it's totally in the sugya of how it works in Erev Shabbos. I understand everyone's questions, and I think this is a point, as the Rav Asher would say, a mokim lis gadol boy. It's a point to be ma'ayin in it, and I think it is a very valid point. But it brings out beautifully the sugya. Finally,
why can't I light right now if it's going to last until tomorrow night?
Because it's not the zman halakha.
It is Zman halakha.
So that's the sugya. That's the sugya that he wants to bring rayas. He has rayas from different svarim. I understand. I understand. Again. You're not like asking a bomb kasha. So that's a goof. That's what he's pointing out. He's pointing out that even when you're madlik, the din of re'iyah, he wants to say, has to be a night. He has rayas from when you see the bracha of shasanisim, when you're a brachas haraya, has to be by nacht, even though you're allowed to light earlier. There are rayas to such a concept. He didn't make it up. And therefore, it's what I say. I understand the kashas. I'm not, again, something to look into. If you want his makaris, we could bring it out afterwards. Let's conclude. With, first of all, just to point out, without getting political, he points out over here, the fact that we light in a shul is a chiddush. And no one should say, we light in a shul, that means you're allowed to light a menorah in any public place and make a bracha. Very, very shver. How they do it in all these public places is a shayla, and we'll leave it at that. Now, are you allowed to put, this is nagea for us right here. Are you allowed to put out the menorah in shul when you finish davening? The menorah wasn't lit for a half hour. So he says over here, he brings from a sefer Melamed L'Hayil, and he says, Yasher says the same thing. You're allowed to put out the menorah, which is a chiddush, because it didn't light for the zman halakha. But it's a minhag. Correct. I'm not arguing. He says, but Shevet HaLevi comes along. He says, "In kedai lechbais." He says you shouldn't do it, and he says, unless it's a chashash talika, of course, etc. And Shmuel Felder says, by the way, there's been too many bad stories, so please be careful. Don't leave your menorah lit.
Everybody wants to run home.
Yeah. Correct. 100%. Finally, interesting what happens in shuls with multiple minyanim, multiple areas. There's a chiyuv in every minyan, each area, to light their own menorah. And the Pasha says the menorah should stay lit for the duration of the time. That was just some tidbits of interesting halachas that I personally found fascinating. I hope everyone else did. And we'll end with one fascinating shayla of Yitzchak Zilberstein. Fascinating. Only Yitzchak Zilberstein could have such a beautiful shayla. This is Baal Tshuva. About Tshuva. It's Gavaldik how he writes. He's about Tshuva Teri. Teri is like when you buy chicken. It's oif teri. It's raw chicken. It's a raw Baal Tshuva. It's fresh. The paint. When you see paint on the wall, it's a tzvia teri. It's wet paint. Anyways, Baal Tshuva Teri, that his wife Lamaisa wasn't chayzer b'tshuva yet. Okay, comes Chanukah. Husband's a chayzer b'tshuva. Husband wants to light menorah. His wife says, Mazeh minagaza, what are you doing? V'gamzeh misukan. It's a sakana. It could cause a yachal ligram l'sreifa, v'chol minei tainai shoinais, and she's all upset. Says Rav Yitzchak Zilberstein, she eats a hara some befia. Obviously, all the tainas are ridiculous, but okay, she's not holding there. So the husband, he's about tshuva, obviously smart guy. He says to her, listen, I'm not going to light regular candles. You know what I'm going to do? Scented candles. Scented candles. Everyone has scented candles. Such a beautiful thing. I want to light scented candles. We'll put them in the house, and they'll smell beautiful, and you'll get hana from them. And this, his wife says, that we could do. He comes to Rav Yitzchak Zilberstein, and he says, Rebbe, 1 second. We all know you're not allowed to get hana, maybe, from a menorah. We know the din of a shamish. He says, Rebbe, what should I do? That was the shayla. A mayr dik shayla, and of course, to tell this guy, just light it, don't make a bracha. He wants to do the mitzvah. He's about tshuva. What can we do? Now, of course, before we say his tshuva, you could go down the whole, kiruv route that, we'll give out maybe a shvara kula that maybe one day we'll bring the back to Yiddishkeit. We're going in the world of din over here. Says Rav Yitzchak Zilberstein, says in Shulchan Aruch, Aser lehishtamish b'ner Chanukah. So, what can we do over here? Comes along Rav Yitzchak Zilberstein, and he says, go look at the Mishnah Berurah. And Mishnah Berurah explains that there's 2 reasons why it's aser to use the candles of the menorah. Number 1, so that it's nicker, that the ner mitzvah is lafarsim anes. And if you use it, it's not nicker that you're doing the nes. Number 1. Number 2, al yidei nes, the menorah was mitakin. And therefore, they created a menorah that you're not going to be mishtamish with. Comes along with Yitzchak Zilberstein, and he says, based on what we just said, light with a bracha your scented candles. How do you light with a bracha your scented candles? And he explains, absolutely beautiful. He says, what was the isser that we just said? Hishtamish. So you say, it's a word. Hishtamish, I know, what's the chilek? He says, no, I'll prove you. Says the Mishnah Berurah, what is aser to do by the candles? Livdaik ma'is, to check money, or to count the money to the light. However, what happens, again, let's go back into the nostalgic world of Chazal. They didn't have electricity, so there wasn't much light in their house. The menorah is giving off the light. So now that you're sitting in your house, it's more lit. You're enjoying the room. Is that a problem? Absolutely not. Even though it would have been dark before, and now you're enjoying it, it's still mutter. Ner Chanukah aser hana'ah, like Arla, like Klaya Keren. You're allowed to get hana from it. It's an aser to do a maisa, hishtamshush, to sit there with getting the hana from the light. That is not a problem. And he says further, you see in the Sha'ar Tzion says, what if now in the room, there's light in the room? Are you allowed to walk in the room? Now you're not going to trip. Maybe that's called a maisa, because you're not going to trip. Says the Sha'ar Tzion, you're still allowed to do it. That's not called a maisa, he says. That's not called ishtamshus. And therefore, but wait, there's another problem. There's another problem that we're all forgetting. There were 2 reasons Mishnah Berurah brought down. Mishnah Berurah said, what about the fact that it has to be nicker, the shem mitzvah? It's not going to be nicker, it's a scented candle. It's not nicker libnei beisai. Proof in the pudding, he told his wife it's a scented candle, and she was masking. So here's where Rav Yitzchak Zilberstein says a chiddush. Okay, Rav Yitzchak Zilberstein is allowed to say a chiddush. Says Rav Yitzchak Zilberstein, you're right, for those in the house, it's not nicker. But when you drive by and you see in the window 6 scented candles, what does every person think? Zagivaldika menorah. Zilberstein, that's called the nicker. He says more that there's going to be a shamish, I guess the way that you're going to set it up, and therefore it's not a problem. You're allowed to get hana from the smell of. And then he concludes, and he says, what about the fact that a menorah is huksal mitzvasai? He says that's not a problem either. Just like you're allowed to have light when you sit in the house, just like you're allowed to walk around, you're not going to trip. Therefore, he tells this Gevaldika Bal Tshuva, scented candles is a beautiful way to go. You can light them to cover the mitzvah, and you get benefit. B'siyata d'shmaya, learning the halachos, a little bit more depth to the halachos that I think and I hope we got today will allow us to be makayim what the Gemara in Shabbos teaches us. Haragel b'ner, havyonan, badav tamid chachamim. And we like to say that this is a 3-part skula. If one is not married yet, it's a skula for a shidduch. Why? You can't have children unless you find the shidduch. One who's married doesn't have children, it's a skula to have children. Why? Because you can't have good kids unless you have a kid the first time. And one who has kids is a skula to have good kids. Why? Because that's what the Gemara says. Rashi says is of course referring to the menorah. Siyat Shmaya, a little more kavana, a little more thought, a little more understanding will bring us to do the mitzvah with a higher level. Shkaya.